Hey guys, it's LEGO Boys Eatery. Today is my 21st Q&A. So this is the 21st episode of the video series where you guys ask me questions and I answer them. So if you want to have your questions answered next time, be sure and leave those down in the comments down below. Now before you leave one, make sure it's not a question that you can answer by yourself. For example, what camera and editing software do you use? This is one of the many questions that I have answered on the About page on my channel. Just click on the little About button and you can get all my PBs, my official averages, all stuff like that, as well as information like my camera and editing software. By the way, I use a Canon T7i and Adobe Premiere Pro. Would you rather solve a skewb or solve a skewb? I think I would definitely go for the skewb. What is your least favorite PLL to execute? That's actually a pretty interesting question because I actually like most of my PLLs. I've found algorithms that I like to execute, but there are some of them that are still pretty inefficient, like for example my nperm. It's like this. Requires lots of regrips and it's just not that great. That's probably just about my least favorite one. If you could either only have magnets in a cube or have a cube lubed, which one would you choose? That's actually really interesting because I think most people kind of take for granted nowadays how good you can make a cube using just lubrication. People are just focused on magnets, they don't really focus on the whole lubing part of it. But I think it is still very important and I think I would probably choose that option because magnets can make a cube pretty good, but if you don't lubricate it, it's just not going to be that great. And even without magnets, a cube can still be really good if it's set up properly. Can you give me 4 tips for Pyraminx? Haha, I see what you did there. 1 tip, 2 tip, 3 tip, 4 tips. There you go. How far will you go making barrel cubes? Will you ever do one past the 7x7? Well, honestly, this one took a very long time to make, and I'm not going to make another one of them. It probably took like around 20 hours just sanding all the pieces and all that kind of stuff. So will I ever make another one? Maybe if I have a lot of extra time that I want to make a mod with. Maybe like an 8x8, maybe someday, but not anytime soon. This one's big enough for me. Stickerless or stickered? Honestly, I don't really have too much of an opinion on this issue. I could pretty much go either way. I've used both of these cubes as my main. I feel like a lot of people prefer one or the other. Like a lot of people prefer stickerless because you don't have to mess with shades and all that kind of stuff, which I kind of do like my own shades, so that's kind of a benefit to stickered cubes. But at the same time, yeah, these ones are easier. Really, I don't really care. Did you learn how to solve the cube on your own, or did you use a tutorial on YouTube? Honestly, the very first time that I learned how to solve a 3x3 when I was 8 years old, I first looked on YouTube and found Dan Brown's tutorial. I did not understand it at all, so instead I used a book from the 80s, really old, inefficient method, and I learned how to solve it there. I honestly kind of wish I would have gone back and actually tried to figure out how to do it myself. Honestly, I don't think I could have done it back then, but if I had, I think that would have been a lot more rewarding than just going and looking it up. And then years later, I actually did use Dan Brown's tutorial and use that method instead. Will you be going to any other competitions before Nationals? So in my last Q&A video, I talked about US Nationals 2018, which is going to be in Salt Lake City, Utah this summer, and I'm going to be going. And since then, I've actually signed up for another competition, which is between now and then. It's called Colorado Qualifier 2018, which is going to be in May, so I'll be at that one too. It has pretty much every single event besides FMC, so definitely go to that if you can. It's in Colorado. Out of all the mods you've made, which one is hardest to solve? Well, in terms of like complexity of like number of pieces, that would be like the 7x7 barrel. But in terms of actually difficulty, like cubes that I can't personally solve myself, that would be something like the 5x5x3, which I have never solved and it's still kind of scrambled. And even this Meffert's bandage cube, I can just never figure out how to do the last few pieces on this one. So yeah, those are some pretty hard ones that I've really never solved. Will I be the first person to get my question answered in the video? No. WCA or non-WCA puzzles? Now, even though there's a lot more variety and interesting things that you can do with a non-WCA puzzle, personally I do prefer the cubes that I can go and compete in at a competition because it kind of gives me more motivation to actually go and solve them and pick them up and get better at them. Do you really play with Legos? If so, can you show me? Well, get out my Lego cube here, solve it up, get out a Lego. There we go. Would you rather be faster on 3x3 than Felix, or have unlimited mobile data for free? And just a little edit there, the data is fast. Well, I think if I were faster than 3x3 on Felix, that would be a little bit cooler, and I think I could manage buying my own data at that point. How fast were you when you were 11? Now, I actually first learned how to solve a cube back when I was 8 years old, and using that old method back when I was 8 or 9, I probably got down to around a minute as my best time. Now, when I was 11 and I relearned how to solve a cube using a better method, I probably also got down to around a minute when I was 11 years old, and then I got faster and faster from there. Do you think gender matters when speed cubing? Now, I imagine you're talking about like actual physical differences that make one gender inherently faster than the other, like there are in a lot of sports and things like that. And I don't think there is really much of a difference. It has more to do with how you practice and how fast you can turn your fingers, things like that. I don't think there's much of a difference except for the fact, of course, that there's a lot more boys speed cubing than there are girls. When you started cubing, what made you choose CFOP over Ru and ZZ? Honestly, when I started, it was kind of the only method I really knew about, and I kind of started making up my own things with the last layer, making up different things using algorithms that I found online to do it in some weird, inefficient way, and eventually that kind of translated well into using CFOP and for the last layer, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it kind of just came about naturally the way that I kind of progressed learning how to solve a cube. And also, are there any other speed cubing methods besides CFOP, ZZ, and Ru? There are a lot of different ones. One of the main ones is Tetris, but you can also have like pretty much infinite variations of things like CFOP, like pretty much any variation you could call a different method. So there's pretty much as many as you want. Who's your favorite famous cuber like Felix Zemdegs? Now, there are a lot of cool ones like Max Park and of course Felix, but I think one of my favorites for sure is Drew Brads because he's really good at things like 3x3 of course, but he also does things like Pyraminx and skewb, which he's also really good at. He's one of the only really fast people who also does the side events like these ones. What would be your tips for cubing channels? Now, there are a lot of different things that I could say here, but one of the biggest things for just YouTube channels in general is just being very consistent, very determined to keep on making videos that aren't really terrible, just kind of make decent videos over and over again, and eventually people will kind of catch on. And for cubing videos in particular, just try and do stuff that people haven't done before. Don't just make tutorials and things like that, because everybody has done those, everyone's seen those. So make something unique that only you have made. Would you rather use a dollar store cube with glue on the inside for a day, or use an unmodded Rubik's brand for the rest of your life? I don't really understand people who ask questions like this, like one day versus your life. I mean, it's kind of obvious which one you would avoid, the one with your whole life. Like even if you're saying a dollar store cube with glue in it for a day versus using a GAN RSM for my life, I would choose the dollar store cube because I don't want to be stuck with this cube for the rest of my life. Are primary color cubes competition legal? Now, I don't think I actually have any primary color cubes. It's kind of like a different color of plastic, like black or white. It's kind of more of an off-white, and as long as it's a totally solid color, you can't see through it or anything, it should be competition legal. If it's like transparent or anything like that though, then it would not be legal. When do you think you will reach 100,000 subscribers? Now that's actually pretty crazy that that's actually going to be coming up pretty soon, but I think at the current rate that I'm going, somewhere between like 4 and 6 months from now, I should reach that number, which will be really crazy. I'll be sure to make some really cool videos around then, some giveaways, things like that. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for that 100,000 big number coming up. Do you ever think there'll be an official sub 5 3x3 average? I think it's very likely that that will happen sooner or later depending on how lucky people get, especially with new advances in cubing hardware as well as new methods. All you really need is 2, maybe 3 good sub 5 solves, which is definitely possible in an average, as well as some other good low 5 solves, and you pretty much have a sub 5 average. Name one thing that makes skewb and Pyraminx better than 3x3. Well, I'm better at them. How can you increase your TPS, or turns per second? I think the general advice for this is to just kind of focus on other things before you focus on your TPS, like focus on getting good look ahead in F2L, or focus on executing the algorithm well, if you're doing like OLLs or PLLs, and from there just practice and practice, building up speed faster and faster, not having pauses, things like that, and look ahead, and eventually TPS will kind of just come with that practice. Would you rather be sub 10 on 3x3 or sub 3.5 on skewb? Now I'm not quite sure how those two things compare in terms of like the amount of effort you had to put in, but I kind of feel like 3x3 might be a little bit harder, and I'm kind of inclined to say 3x3 because it's kind of more of an interesting event to do really, really fast as compared to a skewb. Even though it is my favorite event, I feel like I would rather get fast on it on my own and be sub 10 on a 3x3. How do you feel about nationals costing $100? Now I feel like this has kind of been more of a trend recently with competitions having a fixed price instead of being based on the amount of events that you do like it used to be. Now before, when I went to nationals, it would normally cost me $80 or $90 anyways, because I would do as many events as I possibly could, so it doesn't really affect me very much, the change, but it can affect some beginner people. If you're just doing like 2x2 and 3x3, that would be a lot more money than it was before, so I feel like it might be a little bit less fair with the new system. Anyway, that is pretty much it for this 21st Q&A episode. Be sure and leave your good questions down in the comments below for me to answer next time, and that's pretty much it for this video. I will see you guys next time. Bye!